Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Lazard. Did I get that right?
Got that right.
And it's Allan Wachendorfer. Pull up very, very close. But I get that all the time, so I'm not offended at all. So I'm really honored to have been invited here today to speak with you all on this historic day. And thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share this moment with you. And you're probably wondering, who the heck is this guy? So I'm going to get to that. I'm going to start out by talking a little bit more about the Vera Institute of Justice and what our journey was in getting into what our connection is to this kind of work with post-secondary education in prisons. And then I'm going to share with you the story of my own journey in hopes that it'll provide some inspiration for you all that are graduating today and those of you that are in the soon-to-be graduates. So the Vera Institute of Justice is a nationwide and highly respected institute for justice reform. We are on a mission to build and improve justice systems that ensure fairness, promote safety, and strengthen communities. We work with others who share our vision to tackle the most pressing injustices of our day, from the causes and consequences of mass incarceration, racial disparities, and the loss of public trust in law enforcement, to the unmet needs of the vulnerable, the marginalized, and those harmed by crime and violence. Vera works in partnership with local, state, and national government officials to create change from within. In other words, we're a grass-tops organization rather than a grassroots organization. But we certainly respect our grassroots partners. And how we do our work is that we typically do our work is that we study problems that impede human dignity and justice. We pilot solutions that are transformative and achievable. And we engage diverse communities in informed debate. And then we harness the power of the evidence we've gathered through that process to drive effective policy and practice. So in that vein, in 2012, we piloted a project called Pathways from Prison to Post-Secondary Education in nearby North Carolina and also in Michigan and New Jersey. It was an intensive program where people would begin to receive college education while incarcerated, get plugged into intensive reentry services upon release, and then continue to complete their college education upon reentering the community. We learned a lot during the implementation of that program and began to see immediate results. Those results began to confirm decades of research that indicate that those who participate in post-secondary education programs while incarcerated are 48% less likely to return to prison than those who receive no education. In the meantime, Vera had discussions with the Department of Education about how they could help build programs similar to the Pathways Project across the country. You see, from 1965 until 1994, people in prison had access to college through Pell Grants. In the 1994 crime bill, Pell Grants were banned for people in state and federal prisons. We went from over 700 programs in the country to about 8 almost immediately. However, in 2016, the Obama administration started the Second Chance Pell experiment, which was a way for the Department of Education to test the theory that providing access to Pell Grants would restore what we once had in prison: rehabilitation through education. This program is what you all are now part of. I imagine some of you here today were around for the very beginning of that. I imagine that it may not have always been a smooth process. Doing the work that I do with technical assistance, I know that there are the difficulties that are out in the world of going to college are exacerbated by the fact that you're here, there's no internet access and that, so I applaud you for making it through that process itself and know that road was probably a little bumpy for you. But I also want you to know that you have now paved the way for future students, the ones that are seated behind you and the ones that are seated behind them that are not here yet today. Not only has the Second Chance program continued, it is now being expanded to more states. And that's what my team at Vera works on, among all the other things our teams at Vera do to shape a more just society. So we help make the case for this program to exist along with our allies, and we helped to implement all these programs. And we will continue to work to expand access until everyone incarcerated in America has access to the full array of educational opportunities that exist in the community. And we need you all to be successful to show why these programs are so important. So how did I get here? Believe it or not, a little more than 10 years ago, I was sitting not right where you're at because I didn't get the opportunity to take college while I was in prison, but I was in a place just like this, pressing my bunk, hitting the weight pit after chow time, making 15-minute phone calls to my family, running up my mom's phone bill, trading ramen noodles for a quarter pack of cigarettes on the yard. I was sitting there wondering what was supposed to be rehabilitative about all this. Why taking away every freedom from the outside wasn't enough, I had to be deprived of almost every human dignity and respect. Somehow that was supposed to make me better. But I knew all that stuff happened to me for a reason. Or at least I wasn't going to live my life believing any different. I believed that all the drinking and drugging and crime and jail and losing my kids and my family, my house, my cars, and going to prison was going to be for something. I was going to make it for something. That I was going to use my life experiences for good. There was a reason, a path I was on, a full restoration, and giving back to the world I had taken so much from. Changing the world, righting my wrongs. So I read, I wrote to people that I hurt, I planned, I dreamed, and I set my sights on something bigger. And nothing was going to stop me. But when I got out, everything tried to stop me. I got turned down for jobs, I got turned down for housing, I didn't have a driver's license, I was an ex-con trying to make a case that I deserved to get my kid back. It was crazy. But nothing was going to stop me. I knew that this all had to be for something. And I had an itch to go back to school to get a degree. Not just for the job, because you better believe I needed the money, but to learn, to be in a space with a different way of thinking, with critical thought, vibrant discussions, access to resources and wisdom. So I started taking classes at a community college for social work. And I was hooked. I knew I had found my path. I went on to apply at a 4-year institution to get a bachelor's degree, but I had to check that box. And sure enough, I got flagged for my criminal background. So I drove down about 50 miles south of Flint, Michigan, where I was born and raised, tough town. And I got onto this big college campus. I find my way among all the buildings, find my way to the admissions building where my interview was to take place. I walk up the stairs and into the room, and the guy asked me to have a seat. And I look up and I realize that there's the biggest oak table that I've ever seen in my life. The thing had to be 8 foot wide and 20 foot long. They probably killed 3 trees to make this table. And there were a dozen people sitting around one end of it, and they sat me at the other end at the head of the table, and I felt like I was about 2 inches tall. They proceeded to ask me questions. Actually, they interrogated me. Who are you? What did you do? Why did you do it? Did you hurt anybody? What have you done to turn your life around? Why should we let you on our campus? Why should we believe you won't be a danger to our students? I thought I was toast. But I told my story. And I certainly wasn't as articulate at telling my story as I am now. I certainly had no experience talking to a group of people like that. But I did the best I could. And I left the meeting, and would you know, as I walked outside, and the biggest downpour that I've ever seen in my life hit me. And I have no umbrella, and I'm just getting drenched. I'm getting rained on so much I feel like I'm going to drown. It was like nothing could go right that day. So I'm getting discouraged. And over the next few years, that would become a theme. Every time I would try to move forward, I would feel some force trying to push back on me. But after a while, I started to think of that as a test. Like a test by the universe to see if I really wanted it bad enough. And I also realized that I had planted a lot of bad seeds, and I was still reaping what I had sown in the past. So I had to start planting good seeds that I could harvest later. Well, the school they let me sweat it out for a while, but about a week later I got a call, and they gave me a shot. I got in. And I remember taking one of my first classes in this big, huge lecture hall in a sociology class and tearing up a little bit because I felt like I had finally made it. I made it. And this is such a special thing to be experiencing this and learning all that great knowledge and wisdom in the world, and those types of moments never ended for me. I would face a struggle, I would push harder, I would overcome it, and I would later get to experience what I learned is called delayed gratification. Not that instant gratification you get when you get high, or you cheat a little bit to get by, or you take the easy way out. Delayed gratification comes when you take the road less traveled, and you do the hard work up front, and it pays off later. And you get, in the moment, you know it when you feel it, because you get goosebumps, or the hair stands up on the back of your neck, you get a big smile on your face, you get a warm feeling inside your body that you know you've done good. And you should cherish those moments when they come, because they are what life is all about. And what a great opportunity that you all have had to have some of these types of experiences in here, to have productive conversations about your future, to critically analyze text and learn skills, hard and soft skills, that you can use for the rest of your lives to be productive, contributing members of your communities, even if that community is one you were part of in here. Because I know some folks might not be going home right away, or they might not ever get the opportunity to go home, but that doesn't mean you can't contribute in positive ways to your community, both in here and on the outside. So I want everyone to take a moment and relish this accomplishment. Those goosebumps and the hair standing up on the back of your neck today at various moments are the result of delayed gratification, of months of hard work that you've put in. You can't get this feeling without it. And what a beautiful thing it is. So that story about going back to college for me started in about 2010, shortly after I left prison. And by 2014, I had moved out of one of the most crime-infested cities in America, where the day before we moved, the armed security guard from the projects that we lived in was murdered right outside the window. We moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is consistently voted one of the best places in the country to live. That in itself was a major accomplishment for me. I earned back custody of my daughter. I paid off my past debt, court fees, I got my driver's license back, I got off parole, I met and married the love of my life. I got a bachelor's degree and went on to get a master's degree from the University of Michigan at the #1 school of social work in the country, a school that I would later go on to teach at part-time. And I also landed a position as the policy director for the National Association of Social Workers in Michigan. 5 years after that, I took this job, and I packed up my family and I drove across the country to live near the beach in Southern California, and now I'm standing here talking to you. And just as an aside too, through that process, I mean, sometimes we talk about this work and we say it's also generational, because you all may inspire your kids, if you have kids, to go on and get a college education. What actually happened in reverse for me, I'm a first-time college graduate. I inspired my mom to go back to school, and so she went back and got her associate's degree. And I didn't do any of this stuff alone. For sure, I had to want it, and I had to want it bad, but I certainly had help along the way, from loved ones and folks who arrived in my life at unexpected moments to provide second chances. People who saw something in me that sometimes I didn't see in myself. And you never know who those people are going to be, but they tend to come when you need them. And they travel in circles where people are trying to do good, trying to better themselves. At school, at your job, at the local community center. And when you have an opportunity to be that door opener for someone else, take it, because it will change your life in ways that you can't imagine to live a life of service to other people. When I left prison, I walked out backwards. I had seen the lack of rehabilitation taking place. I didn't want to forget about those that I left behind. I wanted to create changes that would help others have a better experience than I did. And since then, I'm happy to say that the narrative is beginning to shift. More and more people I see are recognizing the error of the tough on crime era and the need to create a system where people are sure they're held accountable for their actions, but are provided the tools that they need to be accountable and to be successful contributing members of society, where we focus on rehabilitation and not revenge. And last but not least, as I begin to wrap this up, don't be scared to move on from people that are holding you back. And recognize that as you grow, you will lose people. But you will find new ones that will support you along the way. There are very few people that I still talk to now that I was talking to 15 years ago. Those people tend to fall off when you start to evolve. But that's okay. Just keep your faith, set your intentions, plant those good seeds, set a good example for your children or your mom. Don't let obstacles stop you, because there will be obstacles. Surround yourself with leaders and trust yourself. Believe bigger. Because I stand before you now as proof that people can change. People are restorable. And as civil rights attorney Brian Stevenson says, each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. You can do this. Thank you.